Much like in the real world, history in business tends to repeat itself. And that's been reiterated to me this evening. It's currently 9:43 p.m. on a random Wednesday night, and we've just had a staff member resign with zero notice, saying that she's handing her stuff back in tomorrow. And I saw this coming weeks ago. Stacey and I, the manager at Enhanced Cleaning, we saw this coming weeks ago, and we've noticed a pattern between employees that is beginning to really manifest in a really funny way. And so let me explain. A couple of months ago, we had a really bad problem with one of our employees. They started off great. Everything was amazing. They were doing really good work. And then we noticed a decline in the quality of the work. So we started getting some feedback from the customer, and it turned from one customer to two customers and then three customers. And it was like, started with little things and then it started getting bigger and bigger. And when we tried to approach the cleaner about it and, explain these things have been missed, we just want to know what's going on. Have you forgotten to do these things? Did you run out of time? Like what's happening? And at first, the cleaner is receptive to it, and they say that they're going to adhere to these issues and fix them and make sure they won't happen again. But then they continue to happen. And when the feedback is brought up again with the cleaner, they get defensive and they start to get emotional. And you can sense friction that's starting to arise between the cleaner and the management, which in this case is Stacey, because she runs the team in Bunbury. And that friction leads to attitude problems and behavioral problems. And so cleaners start calling in sick like an hour before they're supposed to work. Sometimes they don't show up at all. And then when Stacey tries to talk to them, they get, again, an attitude, and they get really snappy with her. And it's like there's just all this emotion that's come out of nowhere. And then eventually they just quit. They just leave. And it's funny. It's a very similar pattern that we're starting to see. And the same thing happened just now with this lady who just left. So for the past, 4 or 5 weeks, Stacey has been telling me about this particular cleaner who has just had the worst attitude. And it's gone to the point where other team members have noticed it. And so that's a problem. We don't want to be seen as people who tolerate that kind of behavior. But on that same token, when we try to talk to the cleaner about it, she gets so defensive. And I actually brought it up with her today for the first time since Stacey has started to tell me this stuff. So it's been about 4 or 5 weeks. We haven't had a real conversation with her about her conduct and the way she's been acting. And I just spoke to her today briefly on Slack. I didn't even call her. I sent her a message because I know how volatile she is. I just sent her a message outlining some things that were an issue. And I did it in a nice way, but I said, basically said to her that we're not going to tolerate this and it needs to change. I got no reply from her. That was at around 9 in the morning. It's now 9 p.m. and she's just messaged Stacey to say that she is done with her job. And the reason that she cites for being done with her job is that she thinks that Stacey and I are no longer happy with her work, and she just doesn't feel like this is for her anymore. And she's absolutely right. Stacey and I are not happy with her work. Stacey's brought that up with her quite a few times, obviously in a constructive way, trying to lift people up rather than just, sandwich them with guilt and negative feedback, because that's not how we uplift people. That's not what we want to do as employers. And so it's happened so many times where people display this pattern of bad behavior that leads to resentment and then eventually just self-selecting and leaving. Because these are people that we talk about firing anyway, but it just becomes a problem because they're such a hassle and they're so volatile that we don't even want to have that conversation with them, which is obviously a bad thing as employers. You never want to feel like you have a power dynamic that isn't in your favor with an employee. However, now we're in a much better position these days because we can replace people straight away. And so more recently, we have been firing people and replacing them. But these couple of people were from way back before we really had that leverage over our staff. And so there was a much more there was a much deeper connection between Stacey and the team members, and there was a much bigger relationship. And so it was a lot harder for her to make these decisions. And she was just hoping that it was a bad time for the cleaner and it would kind of pass and she would go back to the way she used to be. You know, she used to be a really respectful lady. She used to do great work. But it's just, there's that shift that comes, and it seems to come with quite a few people, and we don't know why. It's something we just haven't figured out, but we have noticed a pattern, and that pattern is coming up a lot, and history, as I said, repeats itself. It's repeated itself tonight. It repeated itself a couple of weeks ago. It repeated itself a couple of weeks before that, and it's always in the same way. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, in your business or in any facet of life, really, you're going to notice things that tend to come up a lot, and they tend to happen the same way every time. And every time it happens, you'll be stuck there thinking like, maybe this time is going to be different. Maybe it's not going to happen like it did last time. Maybe it's not going to eventuate like that. Maybe it won't be so bad. And then it is exactly how you think it's going to be. And you're like, well, I should have just trusted my gut like I thought every other time. And it's the exact same in this scenario with this cleaner. We knew she was a problem. We knew we couldn't talk to her, and we lost that power with her. And we know, we wanted to let go of her, but she had a good relationship with the clients we had her with. So it wasn't really a pressing issue to us. But, back in the day, before we had a really good hiring system and we could just replace people like clockwork, it was really hard for us to overcome that, where we would have staff who were obviously taking advantage of that power dynamic, and they were doing bad work and they were having an attitude, and they kind of know that we can't do much about it, because back then, before we had these great systems, we struggled to get staff and we struggled to replace people. And so they just walked all over us, and it just happened again and again in the same way. And this time, as soon as these attitude problems started to come up, I was like, she's going to leave soon. She's going to leave in the next couple of weeks. She's not happy. We don't know why. She's got an issue with herself, and now she's bringing that upon Stacey, and she's just bringing stuff from at home into the business, and we can't have that. And so she ended up self-selecting, which is exactly what I imagined would happen. And we were actually going to give it another week before we fired her. So it's funny how things always kind of work out the way you think they will, especially in business. So I just want to say to you, if you're listening to this, don't discredit your gut. Trust your gut in situations, especially with people. Your gut feeling and your intuition is a lot better than anything else. That's really the most powerful thing when it comes to dealing with people. It can just be as simple as trusting your gut. Because if we trusted our gut on a lot of these past employees, we could have saved ourselves a lot of headache. But obviously now it's happened so many times that we've learned from our lessons, and this won't ever happen again. We already made sure it wouldn't happen again after the last one, but this one was a particularly special case because she'd been with us for so long. But then the behavioral and attitude problems started to come up, and the quality of work was declining, and we just knew it was coming, and it finally came. And here we are. So things are going to happen in your business that when it comes up, you're like, oh, not again. What do I do? And my advice to you would be create a system that voids the stress and the worry and the anxiety and the chance of this ever happening. Because this issue that we have with our staff, or that we used to have with our staff, it's never going to happen again. We have a perfect hiring system. In fact, we've already replaced this cleaner, even though she's literally handed in her resignation outside of hours when she was supposed to start work again tomorrow. But we've already replaced her because we know these things are coming. We can see it coming with how people display these certain things that we've seen in the past. And so that'll happen in your business. You'll get to know, you'll get a feel for what kind of goes on. These patterns will start to show themselves, and you'll start to get used to it, and you'll start to adapt. And when it comes to people are very different, but they're also very much the same. So yeah, it can be a struggle. It really can, but you just take everything one step at a time, and eventually you get to the point where, like we are now, we've kind of cracked the code and we're not going to have these issues again. So just thought it was funny how similar all of these problems are with people, especially with hiring. It's just always the same things. If you've hired people before, you know what I mean. It's just the same problems come up over and over again. You get the same excuses from people when they call in or when they say they can't work or if they're sick. It's just the same things over and over again. So you need to budget for that. When you start to see patterns coming up, you need to create systems and contingencies and workarounds for them, because it's never going to end otherwise. If it's happened once, if it's happened twice or 3 times, it'll continue to happen until you intervene and do something about it. So I just thought I'd share that with you today, this evening. It used to be a big problem in our business, and I feel so relieved that we have a system in place where these sorts of people don't bother us anymore. We can just replace them like they're a pawn on the chessboard, and it really doesn't bother us anymore. It's a great feeling to have, and it restores that power dynamic in your favor and kind of takes that away from the employees. As much as we care about them, we don't want them to feel like they have leverage over us, because it just creates, there's nothing positive about an employee having leverage over an employer. It can also be said, the other way around, but obviously the way we run our business and the way we know, we got the best interests for the employees at heart. So nothing bad can ever come of that. But yeah, patterns, patterns are called patterns for a reason, and history likes to repeat itself, as we know. So that's just a funny little story I thought I would share with you. And thankfully, we're now in a position where we don't care anymore. It's easy to deal with it. So yeah, you're going to notice these things in your business, and it's really just a matter of how you can strategize to create workarounds and processes to prevent it from ever bothering you. And there you go. That's an example of one of ours. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it's got you thinking about some things in your business that maybe keep happening over and over again, whether it be with staff, whether it be with people, technology, you name it. So thanks for listening to another episode of Self-Made. Stay tuned for that school community. It's coming. We're in the works now. We've got the courses being created. It's going to be very exciting and very valuable. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you in the next one.